Hello, and welcome to our Business Information Solutions webcast. I'm Allison Hall, and I'll be your moderator today. The topic of today's webcast is Get Big Company IT Services for your small to medium business. Among other things, we'll be discussing how you can take the strain off of your in-house team and speed the expansion of your network into mobile technology, tablets, and the cloud. We have just a few quick items to go over before we begin. We will hear from today's presenter, and then we'll open the floor to your questions. To participate in the Q&A portion of our webcast presentation, all you have to do is type your question into the Ask a Question text area below the presentation window, and then click the Submit button. You may submit the questions at any time during the webcast. We will manage as many questions as time permits after our presenter. Also, I'd like to draw your attention to the icons on the bottom of your screen, including our social media widgets. Using these widgets, you can connect with Ricoh on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Following today's presentation, please feel free to continue the dialogue and address any additional questions on our Facebook page. If you experience any technical problems, please visit our webcast help guide by clicking on the Help link below the slides window. Now let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Don Neske, Director of Enterprise Services Marketing.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you all for attending today's webinar. Just to go over our agenda a little bit, for a little bit of background. First, we're going to cover Ricoh's IT services and give you a little bit of an overview, talk about why this is relevant and why Ricoh is sponsoring today's webinar. Then we'll go into the challenges with today's IT from a business perspective. And then we'll flip that around and talk about the business challenges from an IT perspective. And then finally, we'll talk about addressing the challenges. And then we'll open it up for some brief Q&A. Ricoh's professional and IT services are really designed to address business outcomes, and we'll talk about those in a second. But what we've really done is we've tried to look at our customers' businesses and design information solutions that will address the business challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis. Some of those desired business outcomes that we hear on a regular basis include cost effectiveness, environmental sustainability, information security and compliance. And you can read the list, and I'm sure that some of these resonate with you and your business. Whether you're on the line of business side and a business leader, or whether you're an IT professional, you're probably struggling at times with how do you achieve some of the optimization around these areas. How do you for example, drive iWorker productivity? How do you optimize your information technology, and how do you develop a strategic infrastructure that will make you more competitive? And at the same time, with all those different changes, how do you streamline those business processes and manage that change in your organization? We'll discuss some of this as we move forward. So today our focus is really around IT services, and we've designed our IT services to have a focus really on improving and making your operations more efficient, but also to sort of take those information technology imperatives off of your hands as much as possible and allow both you and your IT professionals to focus on the strategic imperatives of your business. So we have our proactive IT services, which are really managed IT services to deliver remote managed services where we can also come out into the field. We can deliver managed security. Then we have engineered IT solutions that will help to address your challenges. And here we build a custom solution that's really built to your specific needs. We also have backup and security solutions to make sure that your systems and your business are very resilient. And then we have unified communications, which are really designed to facilitate a collaborative work environment, but also to lower the costs of your communications. And altogether, circling back around, all those can be supported through our proactive IT services. And probably one of the biggest advantages that we can deliver is that we can deliver to you personal, localized service, but with a nationalized footprint. And so Ricoh can take our industrialized, big, large enterprise processes and technologies and best practices, and we can make those available to your small business at a small business price. Okay, well, enough about us. What I'd like to do now is kind of move forward and get to the informational part of our presentation here today and talk about the challenges that with information technology from a business perspective. So I think when we look at IT and business leadership, all too often, either the IT and the business leadership are on different pages or they're unequal partners in the equation. And this can lead to challenges when it comes to getting the most out of your IT. Because ultimately, you're going to want to evaluate the different technologies that you can have and the different opportunities that information technology can deliver from one of these 5 perspectives. So economics, right? We all have heard how important the economy is. I mean, and every day we're faced with economic realities. And today, more than ever, solutions are being evaluated for ROI and reduction of overall total cost of ownership. But total cost of ownership can be very elusive, and we'll talk about ways that you can maximize total cost of ownership, and sometimes it's surprising. And then there's revenue growth. And so, quite frankly, most times IT and IT professionals are not considered in that value chain when it comes to revenue growth. We think of marketing, we think of sales, we think of business development. But more and more IT and IT professionals are being asked to play a very significant role in creating an advantage. And here it comes down to those competitive pressures. Because when we look out there and we begin to look at the different types of service offerings, the different types of products that companies can deliver, quite often it comes down to how quickly you can get those to market, how efficiently you can maintain your business, and whether you can maintain your business, keep it up and running during times of disaster and other challenges, whether it's viruses or other types of attacks that could happen. And so there's competitive pressures to keep going and be on top of your game when it comes to information technology. And then that dovetails very nicely into security and resilience. So businesses more and more are depending on their networks, their data, their connectivity, just to service their customers. So as that becomes more and more an integral part of their overall operations and infrastructure, it becomes imperative that all businesses keep this up and running. And finally, there's an evolving workforce. The workforce today is becoming younger. It's more mobile. There's a disparate. They're spread out all over the country. Sometimes when you want to hire the best talent, they aren't in a local area. So you want to be able to go out and find and source those people who can give your business that competitive advantage. So there is these opportunities that only information technology can help you to solve. So more and more board members are asking, and top management is asking those CIOs to play more of a transformative role, more of a strategic role. And this could be really particularly challenging in small companies that don't have a true CIO. So as small companies are growing, if they have anybody that's performing IT on a full-time basis, quite often, many times they've evolved into that role from an office management role or some other type of role in the company. They happen to be good with IT, so they started to take on more and more of that role. And as they did, they haven't really they don't really have that equality in leadership that some of the other managers have. And so this could be a real challenge because in order to maintain competitiveness, we're finding that in order to drive more strategic value from an IT standpoint, not just delivering day-to-day service, it becomes more and more important to find a leadership and focus the IT effort on the more strategic issues. And that's what strategic management, such as board members and CIOs, CEOs, are asking for. At the same time, there are competitive pressures internally to cut costs, but there are costs to cutting corners, right? So early on we talked about total cost of ownership. Well, we're seeing that more and more companies are trying to cut their IT costs, and so it is a little tricky to try to lower that total cost of ownership. It is tricky to try to maintain some costs, and in the next section we'll go into some of those tactics that IT should be looking into. But when we're cutting corners, things, some of the areas that you have to look out for are, failure to upgrade old operating systems, failure to upgrade old servers, desktops. Those can lead to vulnerabilities that, without having the latest and greatest software, without having the latest and greatest patches, can lead you to be vulnerable to outside attacks, can lead you to actually have just lots of downtime and cost you more money than it actually is worth. The statistic that we see here, that 49% of companies fail to back up their data on a daily basis, is quite incredible. That this happens. If you do have downtime, it can cost you up to $55,000 in revenue due to an IT failure, and mid-sized companies, up to 91,000 or more. And so you can see these are the low end of the statistics. You can find statistics that show even more. So we see that resiliency, just making sure that you've got those bases covered. It's almost like an insurance policy to keep your business going. Okay, so we looked at the IT challenge from a business perspective. Now we'll take a look at the business challenge from an IT perspective. So again, we talked about the pressures on IT to drive and reduce the total cost of ownership, drive more efficiencies, and all while I think a theme that you're going to hear throughout this presentation is this desire from the business leadership to get more out of IT, to do more while having a lower budget and having less resources. So it's really important for IT to perform a true value analysis up front whenever adopting any type of technologies, whenever engaging in an upgrade or looking at developing a new application to solve a business problem. It's really important to get an upfront expectation of the value that you're going to drive. But as you can see, there's several areas that we're finding that that the value is actually being drained. So there's a planning gap, an execution gap, and a harvesting gap. So it's important to develop some KPIs across each one of these areas and then measure and adjust as you go. So a good first step is to make sure that your processes are aligned first, so that the process that you're going to follow and that you want to enhance with information technology is in place, agreed upon, and it's actually going to work. It's tested and validated. And then to design the solution to meet those enhanced processes. And when I talk to IT managers and directors, this is one of those surprising areas for IT directors and managers. And I think when you talk to CIOs, they get this as much as anyone, that an important place for them to be active in the company is in the top line. And it's probably because they're more aligned with senior management. And when senior management is saying that we need to retain and enhance existing customer relationships, it becomes an imperative also for information technology. So here it's important to have someone who is in IT, who's thinking strategically and has the bandwidth to focus on these types of imperatives: attracting and retaining skilled workers, attracting new customers. These are the types of activities that keep a company on the cutting edge, keep them competitive, and give them advantages over those other companies that in their space that aren't focused on there. And so we're seeing that a lot of companies are turning to new apps when it comes to contextual and social experience, when it comes to for retaining customers and enhancing those relationships. They're looking at mobile-centric applications, media tablets and beyond. They're trying to find ways to enhance relationships because they feel that using technology they can achieve these kinds of goals in the most effective manner. So when we start to look at the competition, some of the internal competitive pressures are really stunning. So when we look at some data from the Spiceworks, they're showing that most companies are planning on keeping their IT staff the same as throughout the second half of 2012 and beyond. And yet, when we look at the growth rate of small businesses, they're growing they're growing their overall full-time employee count. And I think that the recent statistics from the labor board has showing the same thing, that labor is growing, the economy is growing, but IT support is not really growing. So on the one hand, we're seeing from all these statistics, all of our research and for what we're hearing from our customers is that we need IT to do more. We need them to play more of a strategic role, and yet we're asking them to play more of a supportive role and manage more people, support more people, in a sense, do more with less. And this was what makes having the right IT partners particularly critical. Having someone who can manage that day-to-day IT for you while your internal IT folks can take you to the next level. Or if you don't have internal IT folks, being able to do both, having the bandwidth to do both so that they aren't just doing the day-to-day, but they have the expertise and the enterprise-grade processes and skill sets to take you to the next level. And resiliency is on everybody's mind. So keeping your business up and running, whether it's hacker attacks or viruses or just systems getting old and crashing, it's on everybody's mind, and we can see some more statistics here that we look at backup and recovery when it comes to new software purchases is at the top of the list, and when we look at new IT service purchases, hosted backup and recovery is at the top, and so is hosted data storage. So we're seeing the same here, that more and more customers are being very, very aware that they just can't do a backup every now and again. They have to have a true strategy behind it. They have to maintain their systems, their data, and then if things do fail, they have to have a plan for getting up and running as quickly as possible with as little interruption to their business. If your business is down, you have a chance to lose your customers. And then we see the remote workers. So again, we're looking at more and more remote workers coming into the workforce, right? So this is evolving workforce. And so when we look at very small businesses, Forrester is saying that 40% of very small businesses have multiple or virtual locations, and 40% say that more than half of the employees are under 35. So we think that this is a trend that's going to continue, and that as we're seeing it, our customers are asking more and more for us to support their remote workers. And part of this is, again, that need to be more competitive, the ability to go out and source the best talent wherever they live. So if you can go out and source, the best person who's 2,000 miles away, they might not be local. You might not want to spend all that money to relocate them, but you need to facilitate that collaboration. You need to facilitate that communication. And so it's really important that you have the right partner to help you to get through that, and that you have the right technology behind it to make it happen. So according to Gartner, 66% of IT spending is to sustain existing products and services. And that is a challenging number, right? So if we're going to ask IT to participate in helping the company to address strategic initiatives, and yet they're spending so much money just maintaining current systems, keeping things up to date, keeping those old workstations running, those old servers, backed up and running. It can be challenging, right? So there's this total cost of ownership that you have to weigh. So again, we talked about how important total cost of ownership is, and we can see that there has to be a balance, right? You have to develop a plan for technology refresh that allows you to maintain those old systems, but to get new systems in place that address those strategic initiatives that make your employees more productive and also allow your IT team to be more productive. So that's a good segue into addressing the challenge, right? So we want to talk, we've identified some of the challenges both from an IT perspective and a business perspective, and we've talked a little bit about how to address them, but why don't we have a recap here on how to address those challenges. So it's really important to form internal and external partnerships. I think that when you look at the line of business, you look at the business leaders in the company, and you look at the IT leaders in the company, they need to be working hand in hand. And it's really critical to make sure that they are part of the strategic planning that goes on in an organization. It's important to make sure that they not only have an ear so that they're in the meetings listening, but they also have a voice, and that they can bring innovations from a technology perspective that others in the organization may not be privy to, may not have that knowledge to understand. And again, let's not forget that information technology continues to be one of the biggest sources of productivity improvement, and it will be for the foreseeable future. So again, if you have these resources internally, great, leverage them. If you don't, this is where it's important to forge those external partnerships. You need to find a great partner who can also kind of huddle up with you and understand your business, take a consultative approach, and begin to do that planning and help you to take your business to the next level. It's really important. So the CFOs are looking at the total cost of ownership. They're looking at ROI, and they're measuring that effectiveness. So benefit realization is really important. So again, it starts with having a good understanding for where you want to drive the value, having a value analysis up front that you can then use to benchmark your progression as you roll out IT. But it'll also gain you respect in the CFO's office, and it'll allow you to help build that solid business case to support your IT initiatives. And the CEOs are looking for that innovation, right? So it's having that partnership with both internally and externally, to address those top-line growth initiatives is really important. And then finally, I think with all this going on, with improvements to productivity, with a new sense of concern for understanding the costs of ownership for technology and watching the money and making sure that you're getting the return on the investment, and making sure that the IT is addressing and finding new ways to innovate and drive revenue, there's going to be a lot of change management that has to go on. So as you're adding those new processes in, you should be making sure that you are also driving the right kinds of change management so that none of the value gets lost in that process. And so, again, I've been talking a lot about lowering the total cost of ownership. So here's some very concrete ways that you can, from an IT perspective, really begin to lower your cost of ownership of IT. So first, one thing we see a lot in small businesses is technology sprawl, especially when you have your own data center. So it's really important to take a look at the servers. Many times somebody will put put this server in to run this application, and they bring another server in to run that application, or they've got a couple old servers over here. Maybe this is doing, they got a server running backup over here, et cetera. And many times they've been around for a long time, and very often you can consolidate and rationalize those servers, and then many times you can continue that path down the road and virtualize. And the more that you can virtualize, typically the better that, the higher the performance and the better that you'll be when it comes to a cost perspective. Containing storage growth is very important. We see data is really just growing, almost exponentially, and there's a cost to, storing that data. And, it only takes, one employee who's backing up their iPhone videos to, their computer at work, and, that storage can grow quite a bit. Planning your technology refreshes. So instead of, all of a sudden waking up and realizing that, your systems aren't up, they aren't facilitating productive, employee work and efficiencies, but rather they're taking a lot of time where, people aren't being effective, they aren't able to work on their computers, they aren't able to access, back-end systems. Make sure you've got a good plan for that technology refresh. And greener facilities and designs, believe it or not, these will lower your costs as well. So you'll be able to run cooler with less power, with less cooling, and ultimately with higher performance. So when you look at your service desk performance, if you do have an IT person internally, or if you want to look at a third party, you want to make sure that the performance is good, that you've got a great first time fix rate, and you're getting your people back to work as opposed to being on call. And then create client efficiencies, right? Make sure that your externally facing systems are doing what they need to do to drive revenue and enhance those customer relationships. And finally, as we discussed earlier, measure, assess, and refine. Make sure you've got the right capability, the right KPIs, and the right expectations, and that you're benchmarking to hit those goals. So, okay, so now we know these are the areas that you can, lower your total cost of ownership, but now you want to go out and maybe look at a partner. And so what are the things that you should look at? I think that first you need to really look at a customer-centric consultative process. There is no one-size-fits-all, so you need a partner who's going to come in, get an understanding for your business, and be able to adapt their process, their technology, and their capabilities to solving your business outcomes. And if they have the right technology and the right solutions, they should be able to then take those and design them in a way that addresses your needs. The best companies are going to be able to not only deliver that local touch today, but as your business expands, as you go out and source those remote workers, and you want to open a new remote location to address markets that are outside of your current area, that they can support you, right? That they aren't so small that they can't support you. And finally, you want to make sure that the company's financially stable, right? You don't want somebody to come in, do the work for you today, and get halfway done and then be out of business, or get it done and then not be able to support you down the road. So those are some key areas to consider. With that, there is an approach that we like to take, and it's a consultative approach, and what we'd like to offer you today is a free network health check. So we'll perform an analysis of your current state. We'll work with you to develop your goals and objectives. We'll address your current business processes and talk about your existing information infrastructure. And then together, we'll put together some recommendations and a plan for achieving the desired state, as well as a roadmap for the future. And so we'd like to offer this for you today. And with that, I'd like to open up the floor for some questions.
Thanks very much, Don. We do have a couple questions that have come in. The first one reads, we're in the process of deciding whether to hire a full-time IT person or find a partner. How can we evaluate whether to hire or contract a vendor?
That's a great question. It's always challenging to decide whether you want to hire somebody internally or whether you want to go out and source a vendor. And there's certainly pros and cons to each. One of the difficulties of hiring somebody internally is that maintaining the skill sets over time becomes very burdensome. So the skills that you hire them for today might not be the skills that you need down the road. And so you have to be considering, how do I support those skills? What kind of ongoing training program am I going to put in place? And then you should be also considering, what role is this person going to play in my business? Are they going to be sort of a lower level, lower skilled tech who's going to essentially just field help desk support types of activities, run some patches, et cetera, or are they going to be able to also participate in strategic discussions? One of the advantages of going with a vendor is that you can get all of that and then some. So you can have, working with Ricoh, for example, we have the ability to provide a 24/7 help desk. We have the ability to provide on-site support. We have the ability to support desktops, servers, and a variety of technology. But at the same time, we have the ability to come in, work with you, and design strategic projects. So you're able to leverage a full panoply of services when you need them and as you need them. So if you hire one person, they'll always be challenged to cover that full array of needs.
Okay, great. We have two more questions for you. One comes from somebody who's gradually evolved into the IT role from an office manager role. And it states, I'd prefer to focus on tasks more strategic to the business, but I find myself supporting fellow employees and just keeping old systems up and running. Their question is, what's the best way to address this?
So we hear that a lot. So a lot of times we have somebody who came from the business side. They took on an IT role because they were just the person who got it, right? And so as they began to develop their skills, they also still maintain that business acumen, right? And so they see IT as being really more aligned with the strategic side of the business, but they're finding that, they're getting those calls in the middle of the night, the sales guy is in a hotel and his presentation isn't working for tomorrow, and he's, the server's down, the website's down at 10 o'clock at night when he's eating dinner, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, and that is burdensome, and it does keep this IT professional from participating in those strategic discussions. So a service like Ricoh's Proactive is a great fit for that. So we can take some of that burden off of the IT professional, where we're, monitoring the systems, the workstations and the servers. We're maintaining the patching, the virus protection. We're making sure that those are going well. And then we can also field many of those help desk calls and keep that off of the IT professional's schedule, and that way he or she can focus on solving for those strategic initiatives.
Okay, great. And our last question reads, over the years we've added this software and that server. We've worked with several different vendors, and now we have several servers and operating systems that are out of date. What would be the best way to get everything up to date and running right?
I think this is a great way for us to work with you on the health check. So we would come in and perform a health check and do a site survey and really get a feel for your current environment and work with you to develop a roadmap. And here again, it might involve rationalizing your servers and your technology, your applications, and then if it's right for your business, virtualizing those technologies and getting you getting rid of some of those servers and maybe cutting them down, to one or two physical servers, and then having virtualized servers that are running on those. So it really is just a matter of us kind of coming in, doing a health check, and working with you to understand your business needs and your current environment, and then working with you to come up with a plan. But that's the way that we would probably address that.
Okay, great. I think that concludes the Q&A for today, and I'd just like to remind everyone to connect with us on Facebook if you have any additional questions following the webcast. And thanks, Don, for your time today, and thanks, everyone, for attending today's webcast. Shortly after the live event, we'll be sending an email reminder to access this presentation on demand. And this concludes today's Ricoh webcast, and thank you to everyone for participating.